So many people walk up to girls and have no fucking clue what they're doing. And even a lot of the coaching out there, it's just, I don't want to say it's wrong, it's just incomplete, right? It's missing something. It's missing the right focus, it's missing some of the right ideas, etc. Like, how many of you have ever heard like, walk up to the girl and just like self-amuse, and that gives you attraction? You guys heard that? Does it work? Sometimes. On average, it works better than being unamused, right? But it's not a complete answer. It's not a full answer. And the real answer goes to understanding the female psychology, understanding female mating strategies, all that kind of stuff, knowing what she's really looking for. And if you know what she's looking for, then you can give her what she's looking for. It's kind of like if the teacher gives you the answers to the test before the test. It makes things a lot easier, right? So that's what I'm going to do for you guys is I'm going to sort of go through a few different things. First of all, I'm going to talk about some of the misconceptions, ideas people have about attraction, that some of them are just blatantly wrong. Some of them are correct, but maybe not complete, right? So I'll go over the misconceptions. I'll go over how attraction actually works and why it must be that way, like what the logic is behind why it works and why it can only be that way. And then we're going to talk about the attraction triggers. Right? I'm talking about the specific things that you can do to trigger attraction. I promise you guys 10. I think I have like something like 13 or 14 actually, when I actually drew this all up. And some of them are compounds, so it's probably more like 20 different things that you guys can do to trigger attraction on a very regular basis. And I'm going to show you guys some infield where girls get pretty attracted to me. And I'll explain to you guys which of the attraction triggers are at play so you can kind of understand what's going on. Instead of like, oh my God, that looks really nice. Like, this is why it happened. And then we'll end off with a little bit of technical sort of going into what on a technical basis you can do to trigger these attraction triggers. And then we're finally going to end off with a little treatise on the life of an attractive girl, right? And specifically, we're going to talk about the life of the professionally hot girl, because that's the extreme example, right? So that's a little bit of what we're going to do throughout. I will take questions as we go. However, I don't want you to interrupt me with a question while I'm talking, please. All right? That's considered rude by me and everybody. So no questions except between slides, and ideally I'll actually call out for questions at certain times, okay? If there's something that's absolutely burning a hole in your brain and you think the entire room has the same question and it's on topic, you can raise your hand and ask it. Otherwise, when I ask for the questions, I'll take questions. And I'll definitely do questions at the end. So if you have something that you really want to know, write it down and then get it to me at the end, okay? We'll have a little time for Q&A and a little time to sort of mingle and do discussion and that kind of stuff at the end as well, all right? So without further ado, let's talk about attraction. All right. So first of all, let's talk about common misconceptions about attraction, what people think. First of all, people think it's all about looks, right? Accurate, inaccurate. Well, do looks matter in attraction? Yeah. Yes. Anybody who thinks no? Good. Looks do matter. They matter a bit. But they don't matter nearly as much as you might think, all right? They don't matter nearly as much as like a Calvin Klein ad would have you believe, okay? They do matter, and actually they matter more indirectly. They matter more because people who look a certain way tend to have certain life experiences, which lead to different differences in how they carry themselves, differences in their confidence, things like that. Although looks do matter a bit because they're an indicator of health, okay? Next, how many people know this word supplication? Who knows this word? Okay, this is a very old school pickup word. Supplication basically means trying to do nice things for the girl in order to make her like you, okay? That's what supplication is. So for example, if you send flowers to a girl you don't know and she doesn't know your name, you are supplicating. You are trying to bribe her into liking you without knowing you. If you walk up to the girl, and not to say, by the way, that buying girls drinks is wrong, because buying girls drinks is very, very effective at certain points in the interaction. But if you walk up to a girl and your opener is, let me buy you a drink so you feel obligated to talk to me, that's supplicating, okay? That's trying to buy her affection for the price of a drink, right? Those types of things. Other forms of supplication is if the girl says she's into rock music and all of a sudden you're the biggest rock fan in the world. That's supplicating, okay? And it makes sense on a certain level. You know, you're trying to be nice to someone. People would like it when someone is nice to them. The problem with supplication is this. If you are supplicating, you're indicating low social value, right? Someone who has an abundance of women, someone who has a lot of women attracted to him, someone who is very secure and firm in who he is as a man, probably isn't going to change his identity for every single girl that comes along. So even though you're doing something nice for the girl, you are doing it in a way that's making you look low value. Also, it's oftentimes perceived of as having an agenda. It's very transparent when I'm doing something nice to get a result. Right? There's a difference between I'm doing something nice out of the goodness of my heart versus I'm doing something nice for an outcome. Doing something nice for an outcome is almost always universally despised. Next is the resume. And again, we have one that kind of works and kind of doesn't. Right? Do you think girls are more attracted to someone with like a stable job, income, like a nice apartment, or a homeless person? Obviously the homeless person. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously the person with a nice job, all that kind of stuff, right? However, it's not all about that, right? That's a factor. It's an indicator of success in various areas, but it's not the whole deal. And the reason why that one falls short is that the resume is a logical construct, right? It's based on facts in the year 2017. It's not based on what emotionally impacts a girl, 1,000 years ago. Right? And we evolved our instincts for sex over thousands and thousands of years. So what makes sense in 2017 isn't always exactly what works on that level. Next is being friends first. Right? See people like shaking their head and scoffing. Okay. It could work in theory. The problem with this, and there's actually nothing wrong. Like being friends with a girl technically makes you closer, makes you know the girl better, and gives you a window and an avenue into her life. Right? The problem is there's probably a reason you ended up as friends in the first place when you met her, as opposed to as a sexual opportunity. Right? So meeting through a friend of a friend is useful. Becoming her friend rather than someone she's attracted to will not help you to flip the script and become someone she's attracted to later. And in fact, a lot of guys, as a kind of a form of supplication, it's supplication by becoming her friend. Right? I became her friend to be nice to her, and then later on I spring it like a year later, hey, by the way, I have a penis. Right? That's a little creepy. All right?
Like, so do I. He's over here.
That's very good. That's very good. So there's actually being introduced through friends or being having good recommendation from friends or being in the same social circle is helpful. But having spent the time and established a friend relationship oftentimes just cements the precedent that it's a non-sexual relationship. So the friends first thing, a little bit of truth there, but not in the way most people use it. And the last is the idea of commonalities and compatibility. And commonalities and compatibility are helpful in having girls become your girlfriends. They're helpful in keeping girls around, but they really don't do a lot for attraction. They do a lot for comfort, right? The girl will care a lot if a guy has things in common with her if she likes him already. Right? If she happens to already be attracted to a guy and then you have something in common, the girl will absolutely love that. But if the guy is kind of like unattractive and a bit of a loser, the commonalities, the girl will if anything, shy away. She'll be like, I don't want to be like that guy anyway. Right? So that helps you at a later stage, but it has nothing to actually do with attraction. Right? So those are a lot of the misconceptions. How many of you guys have seen those in media, in movies, in your life, those kind of things? Right? Okay, cool. Huh? Used to believe that? Yeah, I used to believe that too. Yeah, I grew up for the first probably 17 years of my life believing that, and it messed me up and kept me from actually getting with girls, right? Because if you're trying to do all those things, you're putting a lot of time and effort into a lot of things that are not actually effective, and not putting time and effort into the things that are. By the way, it's not to say that these are completely ineffective or completely wrong. That's the problem with them is they're a little bit right? It's all looks. Looks do matter a little bit. Supplication, if the girl already loved you and thought you were out of her league, she would love it if you supplicated to her. But unless that was already the case, it wouldn't do it for her, right? The resume means a little bit. Friends first, being in the same social circle helps. And the commonalities, it does help, but it has nothing to do with attraction. It has to do with like things that happen later on in the relationship. All right, so how does it actually work? So let's pretend we're girls for a second, right? Girls have this problem, okay? Let's just look at guys and girls and reproductive strategies. In reproduction, if you look at things from an evolutionary basis, success equals having grandchildren, okay? But a lot of people say success equals having kids. That's not true. Because having kids that die at a young age doesn't do anything for you genetically. It doesn't do anything to pass your genes along, right? What really matters is that you have children, and your children are well enough taken care of that they themselves have children, okay? So we're looking at how many grandchildren do you have as the benchmark for evolutionary success. And anybody who says that evolution has nothing to do with these biological instincts or who has sex, think of it this way. Anybody who doesn't do what's in their sexual interest doesn't reproduce and gets weeded out of the gene pool. right? So by definition, this is what it has to be. So basically, girls have two main strategies for getting their genes into the next generation. One is get with the biggest, baddest, most like competent, capable motherfucker with the best genes that will give their child the best possible genes, right? And this is great because they're going to likely have healthy, strong offspring. The downside is this guy who has all those things going for him probably has a lot of girls interested in him and has very, very little incentive to stay with this one particular girl. So the girl is at risk of having him cheat left, right, and center on her, right? So there's pros and cons to this strategy. The second strategy is to find the guy who will stick around. The guy will be nice, will be sweet, will stick around, wouldn't ever leave her, that sort of a thing. And that has the benefit of making sure that their children are raised well, right? Or raised at least with all the resources that person can provide, right? But that person who will stick around, most likely on average, is more willing to stick around if he has fewer other options, meaning he has fewer resources to provide, he brings less to the table in the first place, right? So you can get the guy who brings everything to the table but doesn't want to share it with you, or bring the guy that brings like scraps to the table but will share it with you, right? It's kind of a weird paradox. What a lot of girls do is they kind of split the difference, right? They get the best guy they think they can keep around, right? And you see that a lot, right? A lot of people say they settled a little bit. That's very, very common. The other strategy for kind of mastering this is to sleep with the guy with the good genes and then have the child raised by the guy that will stick around. And that happens more than you would think, right? I don't know the exact statistic, but I've heard quoted somewhere that historically something like 15% of children were raised by fathers who were not their father, if that makes sense, right? So it's a very, very common strategy throughout history. All right, so those are the different sort of things that are happening. And it all comes down to women actually trying to do the best for their children with their genetics, right? And so if you guys think women are evil, just think this all comes from them trying to be essentially good mothers, right? It may sound evil, but it is motivated by caring and good. Okay, so just to kind of like wrap it all together, what do women want? If you were to phrase it in one sentence, and this is actually, by the way, what men want too, if you think about it. Except you'd say girl instead of guy, hopefully. But women want the guy they don't deserve who they somehow won over, right? So that they can feel like they're winning, they can have access to all those resources, but at the same time, they're not constantly worrying that he's cheating all the time. That make sense? Imagine, just to kind of make this all kind of tie together and make sense, imagine a girl who's like, I know we shouldn't rate girls, but imagine a girl's like a 6 out of 10 in terms of her general desirability overall, right? That girl, does she want a guy who's a 10 out of 10? She'll be attracted to that guy, as long as we're talking about attraction. But is that what she really, really wants to date? Probably not, because she's going to be massively insecure and worried that he's going to cheat on her all the time, right? And I've had this. I've dated girls that actually I thought were higher than they thought they were, right? And they're massively insecure, constantly worrying that especially with a job like what I have, constantly insecure, all right? So remember that that's what they're looking for, is the best guy they can possibly have that will stick around. However, that's not the only solution. The other solution is cheating, which actually does happen a lot. What do women hate? What do women hate, right? There are two types of characteristics, or two types of categories of characteristics that women hate. First is nice guy traits that they hate. Neediness. Why do women hate neediness?
Shows that you don't have much value, so you end up acting in a desperate way.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. If someone's needy and if someone's asking for things all the time, that means they don't bring anything to the table. They're not providing things, right?
Scarcity.
Yeah, exactly, scarcity, right? So if a guy is too needy or too readily available to a girl, etc., it sort of subcommunicates that he doesn't have other options, right? It's kind of insidious, right? Because a lot of times within a relationship, a girl will ask you to get more needy, right? Do this for me, do this nice thing, do this nice thing, and then you do like 10 or 12 of those things, and all of a sudden they're like not attracted to you anymore. It's pretty insidious. Next is what I call nice guy agenda, and this is essentially supplication, right? When you're being nice in order to get something, right? I want to kind of give you guys a metaphor here. Let's say that you're in school, all right? And you have two different professors. One professor always gives A's. He just gives an A to everybody, right? The other professor is known as like the most ridiculous, harsh, like you can't get an A in his class. Like it's just not fucking possible, all right? It's just, he never gives an A, but he's an expert in this field and he's really, really good as a teacher, all right? Let's say that teacher number one, the one who always gives A's, you go take his class and you get an A. How do you feel about yourself?
Not the same.
Meh. All right. Let's say on the other hand, you go to Professor B's class, the guy who's like very tough, and you work your ass off, you learn the shit like down cold, and then you get a B+. How do you feel about yourself?
Better than the other.
Yeah, better than that, right? And so this is what happens when the guy is like nice with an agenda, right? The guy who's always nice. People assume that that's his only strategy. It's a coping strategy, right? He's nice because he can't get away with being mean. He's nice because he can't get away with standing up for himself. And so his niceness is just treated as, oh, that's just him. Or it's treated as he's doing it, even worse, he's doing it to get something. He's just kissing your ass, okay? And that's how girls treat the guys who are always nice, right? Now, being nice per se is not a bad thing. Don't think that you have to be assholes to get girls. You don't, right? But if you show that you're incapable of standing up for yourself or incapable of being an asshole when necessary, your niceness won't be taken with any value, right? So that's what I call nice guy agenda. Being nice in order to directly get something. And the other one is social stupidity. And by this, what I mean is essentially girls' reputations matter to them a lot, okay? And the reason why girls' reputations matter a lot is because they want guys to stick around and like raise their kids with them, right? If the girl has a good reputation, that she's honorable and doesn't cheat and those kind of things, it's more likely a quality guy will stay around because he can be more sure that any kids he has with her are actually his kids. If the girl has a bad reputation, a reputation for cheating, sleeping around, that sort of a thing, then it makes it actually harder for her to keep a good guy around, right? Nowadays, and especially historically, this was true, and especially like in sort of the evolutionary times. So when I say social stupidity, what I'm talking about here is the fact that women do like sex, right? And women do want to pursue the high value guys. And actually women would love to be able to cheat openly and not get caught in a lot of cases. Not all women, not all cases. But that actually would be to their evolutionary benefit, right? But a guy who doesn't understand female psychology, who makes the girl feel slutty, who kind of like puts her in situations that ruin her reputation, those types of things, is not someone she wants around because it's not in her genetic best interest. Does that make sense? That was kind of convoluted, but does everybody kind of get where I'm going with that? Okay. So when you show social stupidity, like when you're asking a girl to go home with you and you go, hey, let's go back to my place, right? You say something a little too obvious, or for example, you maybe you're with a girl and you kind of like get a little too physical in front of her friends and make her look bad, right? That's a sign of social stupidity, and it's a sign that if she's with you, it's not going to be good for her long-term sort of genetic prospects. Okay, so social stupidity is something that a lot of nice guys do wrong, right? A lot of nice guys, they also do a lot of things that just make the girl feel guilty or look guilty as well. All right, on the other hand, you can also go wrong by being an asshole. So there are asshole traits that the girl really doesn't like. First one is untrustworthiness, right? If you're not trustworthy, again, she wants the best guy she can get that will stick around. She doesn't want the guy that's just gonna fuck her and like leave off into the savannah and leave her like, you know, pregnant and alone in the jungles of Africa, right? Just a little aside, I don't know how many of you like have sisters or family or just people in your lives that have been through pregnancies, but that shit's intense, right? That shit's intense in the 21st century, right? You can only imagine how intense that would be, like on the, you know, again, savannas of Africa or like jungles of South America or something like that. That's some intense shit, okay? A girl does not want to be left alone during that period without the father of the baby, and certainly does not want to be cast out of the tribe due to reputation, all right? So this shit's like very serious. For women, their reputation on a lot of levels is essentially like a life and death thing, and they're knowing that the guy will stick around from an evolutionary perspective. Again, in the 21st century, not as much, but back in the day, is literally like a life and death genetic thing, okay? So I just want to point out to you that this is not a like fucking around thing. Like it's a serious thing in terms of their biology. And then asshole agenda is sort of like where their only goal is to sleep with the girl and just cast them aside, right? They're very clear in their agenda of just sleeping with the maximum number of girls, right? Because again, we talked about the female evolutionary strategy. There's also the male evolutionary strategy, right? Men have two strategies too. one strategy for men is impregnate the girl and then stick around and be a good father and raise the kid so that it has a higher probability of having grandchildren. The other one is just shoot your sperm everywhere. You have like hundreds of kids or as many as you can, and then hopefully some of them somehow manage to reach adulthood, right? That's a strategy as well, right? And so there's 2 male strategies, 2 female strategies. And I guess the ideal male strategy, technically, if you're doing the spray everywhere one, would be spray everywhere and have some other guy raise the kid, right? But in any case, the girls are not such a big fan of that particular male strategy when employed on them, so they want to try and stop it from happening. Okay, so these are the things women hate. And notice that, interestingly enough, first of all, there's 2 different types of agenda, but any sort of agenda is negative, right? If you're perceived as having an agenda or using them in any way, that's going to be a negative thing. If you're perceived as getting too much out of things, that's a negative, all right? Here's a funny little thing just to illustrate this. So a lot of times when I'm teaching students, right? Students talking to a girl for quite some amount of time, and it's going pretty well, and being a student and not knowing what he's doing, he just never takes the girl home. He's just sitting there and talking and sitting there and talking and sitting there and talking. And then maybe I go over and I whisper to him, like, hey, try and take her home, right? Hey, pull, right? And then he tries. And the girl's like, no, not having it, not interested, da-da-da-da. Right? And so she talks some more, tries again, it's just not happening. Then I walk over, and in about 30 seconds, we're all on our way, and she's going home with us, right? Now, part of that is that I know how to not be socially stupid, right? I know how to phrase things in the right way. But maybe a bigger part is this. I don't have an agenda, at least not as much of an agenda as he does in that context, right? When he's been talking to her for all this time and he's inviting her home, it's perceived as you're coming home with me for sex. When I go over and I'm just having fun and my penis does not have any skin in the game, which sounds really gross, but anyway, but I don't have a perceived agenda in the game, the girl's going to trust me much, much, much more. All right, so lack of agenda is absolutely huge in anything and everything you do. If you could take away just one thing from this and you took away lack of agenda, that alone would probably tremendously increase your results with women and actually with people in any kind of sales situation in general. Okay? Cool, and then also notice there are more nice guy traits they hate than asshole traits. I did that intentionally. Okay. All right, so what happens in a practical sense? So we know kind of what the evolutionary underpinnings are, and we know that it almost has to occur that way, but what's the experience of it like? How does it manifest, okay? So a lot of you may know this kind of stuff, but people usually do not make decisions logically first. All right, we have a lot of different impulses in our brain. If you look at the brain structure, we have kind of the bottom of the brain is our reptile brain. That's our fight or flight. This hurts. I'm hungry. That part of our brain. Okay, and then on top of that, we get sort of our logical brain that figures out cause and effect. And then on top of that, we have our social brain. Right, and it might even actually be social and logical. I don't even know. But the point is, we have our impulse brain at the bottom, and then our more complex brain at the top. Okay, we're almost always making decisions with our more simple brain. Okay? And then we justify them with our massive powers of logic. Okay? So what happens? Well, when a woman is presented with different choices in men, she's going to have different emotional sensations about them based on what's evolved over years and years and based on different factors, which we're going to go into in a minute. Right? And so she's going to decide based on these sort of emotional qualities. Right? And then afterwards, she's going to rationalize it based on the logical things. Right? So, for example, if a guy is really, really nice to the girl all the time and is perceived as low value and weak, then the girl's going to be like, oh yeah, he was just kissing my ass to get into my pants, oftentimes. And the guy may have actually been nice, right? Maybe, maybe not. But the guy may have actually been nice, but she's going to perceive it that way because she perceived low value, acted on that emotion, and then she has to rationalize a reason why that's true and she's a good person. Does that make sense? On the other hand, some guy is a total asshole, right? Tells everybody to fuck off, does whatever the fuck he wants, kind of just runs his own show, right? And then the girl's attracted to him because he can get away with doing that, right? He's perceived as high value. We'll talk about that when we talk about the attraction triggers. So she's seeing some kind of value. She's emotionally aroused, but maybe doesn't quite trust him. And then she sees him open a door for a girl with a puppy, And she's like, oh, okay, oh, he's sweet, he likes puppies. And she rationalizes, oh, he's nice, right? One guy was massively, massively nice, gets perceived as the asshole, manipulative bastard. One guy is kind of an asshole, does one nice thing, and gets categorized as nice, right? So what's going on? The emotions are telling her this guy's a better choice. And then she's rationalizing it in order to make it make sense, okay? And by the way, a lot of these things that I'm saying, I'm talking about female psychology, so when I'm saying this, it sounds negative, it sounds kind of misogynistic towards women. You guys do it too. Every human being is doing this rationalization and acting with their emotions. I'm just mentioning women because we're talking about female psychology. Male psychology is exactly the same, right? It's why impulse shopping works, why they stick like the gum by the cash register. All these things work on everybody. We're just talking about women. Last point I want to make is that women's genes and your genes are not designed to make you happy, okay? This is why women do things that like seem crazy. Right, women will be with a guy who like makes them crazy, who makes them upset all the time. It's because their genes are doing the talking in a way. Their genes are making a lot of decisions or influencing a lot of decisions very strongly. Their genes have one agenda and only one agenda, and that is get as many grandchildren out there as possible. Right, that's the agenda. Right, it's not let me be happy, let me be comfortable. So a lot of the things that seem ridiculous or seem stupid that women are doing and that you are doing, you're doing for those reasons. All right, so now we get into like the heart of game, right? We get into the heart of game, and this is where a lot of the stuff that you're not taught comes into play. So how do women pick a quality guy? How do women know when they're presented with all these different guys hitting on them, all these different guys wanting something from them, how do they pick the right guy? And it comes down to this thing called honest signals. Who here knows what an honest signal is? Who here can kind of explain it? You've been to my events before, but let's see. Anybody else? Yeah, we'll go here.
All right, honest signal is basically how do you behave when you're, for example, talking to her. If she just throws the shit test at you and you don't even flinch, like she can just see it in your eyes, your body language, your voice tonality, your laser eye contact. It's those signals where if you try to fake, she could easily tell you're faking them.
Cool. Okay, so honest signal, like by definition, it's something that's hard to fake, right? So is a pickup line easy or hard to fake? Easy, right? You read a pickup line on the internet, you went and said it to this girl, pretty easy to fake, right? But what he's getting at is when she throws shit at you, when you're taken off guard, the way you react in that moment is harder to fake, right? Does that make sense? All right. Another idea of an honest signal is this. Here's a fun one. So we talk about looks don't matter, looks do matter. How about a guy with like a really jacked, toned physique? Is that easy or hard to fake? Hard. All right. And how do we know it's hard to fake? Because we look at all this room full of people that are into self-improvement, and how many of you have the perfect jack tone physique, right? Hey, this guy right here, like, everybody points to him. All right, so that's hard to fake. That's a hard thing to fake. That makes it an honest signal. Why is it that women respond to guys with tremendously good bodies? Because it's fucking hard to fake, right? It took a lot of investment. And also because the guy didn't do it for her, even though a lot of times he sort of did. Like, he may have done it to make himself more attractive to women in general, but he did not do it for that specific woman. Because he couldn't have been like, oh, I saw you, and I went and got in the gym for 6 years before doing the approach, right? So even if it was done to be more attractive to women, it wasn't done specifically for her, so there's no direct agenda. Does that make sense? Okay? So if it's hard to fake, it's honest, or it's more likely to be honest. If it's easy to fake, anyone can do it, so it's perceived of as dishonest, okay? Anything that's unintentional is perceived as honest. So, for example, if you were talking to a girl and she, wasn't responding that well to you, and then you ran over and grabbed 2 other girls and brought them over with you to go talk to her, that's intentional. You intentionally tried to go get social proof, right? She'll take it with a grain of salt. Oh, he's trying to impress me, he's trying to make me jealous, whatever. However, if it just so happened that you were at an event and you had these girls all around you and the girl noticed from far away that you just happened to have girls with you and you haven't shown any agenda towards her, you haven't tried to impress her in any other way, it's perceived as unintentional, and that way she'll perceive it as, oh, that's just his life, that's honest, right? Or if any of you guys have taken pictures for social media for dating profiles, right? If it's a cool enough picture and there's just girls happen to be in it, it kind of works, right? It kind of goes over. However, if it's a clearly like, I just tried to pose with this beautiful girl and that's all that's going on and I'm trying to like act like that's my life, it looks really try hard and it looks really cheesy and lame, okay? So if it's perceived as unintentional, it just happened, then it's effective. If it's perceived as intentional, then it's not so good. Another one is, for example, things like teasing girls or like the infamous neg. You know this, right? Like putting girls down in order to like get an emotional response. A lot of guys, they try and do this thing, right? They go in and they try and like put the girl down, and it's not a tease, it's an insult, right? It comes off very contrived, it comes off very try hard, and the girl's like, you're trying to get a response from me, all right? The good tease or the perfect neg should come off as though you're actually just talking and it came out completely unintentionally, okay? So for example, if this is not an neg, hey, you're kind of stupid and ugly. That's just an insult and that's just whatever, right? But if on the other hand it was like, hey, so as I've been talking to you, I realize you're fairly educated, you're like no dummy, so I think that you might have some interesting input on this, right? The fact that it's like a little subtle and the fact that it's phrased as a compliment and phrased kind of mixed in there, it's not so try hard, right? That makes it a little bit better. The other one is when it's reactive, right? If she insults you and you insult her back, there's an agenda there, right? It needs to come naturally. Next one, and this is unfortunate, guys. That which is negative is perceived as honest. So if there's certain information making you look good, and other information making you look bad, anything making you look good, people will wonder, did he do that intentionally? Is that manipulative? Anything making you look bad, they're going to assume is honest. Because why would you intentionally make yourself look bad, right? And this is why you can have such a great interaction. You can do so many things right. You do one thing blatantly wrong, and it's just done, right? Because it's perceived that all those things that you did right were intentional, try hard with an agenda. That one thing you did wrong, well, that must be the honest one because you clearly didn't fit. You're not faking that one. All right, does that make sense? That's very unfortunate, but it's a fact of life. And then the next one is that which is costly is honest, right? We talked about the physique. The physique is costly. Right? That's very costly in terms of time, right? So that makes it honest, right? Another great example of this is dangerous sports, things like that, right? Like a guy who, do girls like guys who ride motorcycles? Yeah, a little bit, right? Why? It's risky, right? It's a costly, risky thing, right? Or take for example, I don't know about in New York, but in Texas and stuff, do girls like bull riders? Like a little bit. It's like a little bit dangerous and it's costly, right? There's a cost associated. And that's a funny one because why is putting out this cost, why is it perceived as attractive? Well, it means that you can succeed at life in spite of this cost, right? In spite of having this cost, you can still succeed. For example, why is a Ferrari attractive? Why is a Ferrari attractive?
Because he can afford it.
Yeah, right? He can afford it, or at least he has good enough credit to be given it for a short period of time, at the very least, right? But why? It's because it's costly, right? If a Ferrari was cheap, it wouldn't be a status symbol.